How's it going, everybody, and welcome back to Around the Arena. What appears to be, I think it's episode 4 now, which is pretty crazy. Today we're covering all things esports, and before we jump into the pod, I just want to let everybody know that we do have a Discord. If you haven't joined yet, we have a ton of really cool things going on. I also want to let you guys know that stay tuned for live Prohub watch parties every Wednesday, and if you want to keep up on the schedule, it's all in the Discord. Me and Sam are going to be streaming it live, giving our reactions, going over some of the crazy clips, and just going over all things esports on Wednesdays. We'd love to see you guys there. Anyways, let's jump right in. So today we have a very special guest to help give us a glimpse into the future of pro finals and answer some of those hard-hitting questions. One of the many faces and brains behind the finals Prohubs, and in my opinion, one of the best casters around. Give it up for Waltz.
Dude, I appreciate that. What an intro. I'm honored. I'm flattered. I'm really excited to be here. Love what you guys are doing with the podcast. And yeah, I'm just really excited about the future of the game.
Yeah, we are super excited to have you on. You know, I think early on you dropped some knowledge to us about like Prohubs and things like that. And we've been doing what we can to kind of check it out and get familiarized with, you know, the pro final scene. Obviously, Embark announced about a new major coming out and things like that, which drew our attention as being people who have followed esports for a long time. So we've been really, really excited about this episode and can't wait to dive into all things esports.
Absolutely. I'm excited to jump into it. And, you know, there's a lot there. It feels sometimes like in the finals, especially, it's hard to know what's happening in the scene. Things feel very disconnected. But that's one of the things that I've been trying to do kind of, and I'm sure we'll kind of dig into that later, but the podcast that I started with my co-caster Rio as well, digging into sort of what's happening because it is such a disconnected scene. And so podcasts like ours and podcasts like yours are a way that people can actually know what's going on.
Yeah, I was actually going to talk about your podcast, which is super cool. I haven't had a chance to really dig into it as much as I want to, but I know Sam especially has listened to a couple episodes and he's been telling me about them, and it seems so cool, and I'm so excited to finally get that chance. Outside of that, I know that Prohubs just got affiliated on Twitch, right?
They did, yeah. They made it to the affiliate status. Hope is we can make it to partner soon as well. But affiliate's such a big step for any channel as well. It unlocks subs, it unlocks emotes, all that sort of thing. So a big step for the Prohubs and something really exciting because it unlocks a lot of doors for them in moving forward, which is really exciting.
Yeah, for all you primers out there, by the way, ad-free viewing if you prime sub. So definitely go drop it over there and you get to watch it uninterrupted the entire way through, except for those awesome in-game, the finals ads that you guys drop in between. Those are really cool too. They help tie it together.
Oh yeah. Dude, we have some people like Apparini does some work on those. Really cool stuff. The Apes guys with their TNT, events and their ads are always really cool and well put together. So really doing our best to highlight the community in those ads in between. The producer Burrito, we talked about him later, does a lot of work on that stuff and really puts a lot of heart into it.
Yeah, that's super sick. I love that you guys are getting this huge teamwork to build this really cool event. And I'm not going to lie, I'm a little embarrassed, but I was talking to Sam last night because we were, or it might not have been last night, but when the game was going and I was talking to him and he was like, this isn't official, right? And I was like, wait, really? And I had this idea this whole time that it was official. And it's just, that's how good it looks. I mean, it really does feel like an official Embark-backed sort of tournament. And you guys are doing such good work out there.
Dude, I really appreciate that. You know, it's been a lot of effort by a lot of people, and there's been a lot of lessons that we've learned and how to kind of make things look good. And some people that have dedicated just insane amounts of hours. I mean, it has at this point, it really is just a passion project up until now, right? So it's just people trying to bring things together and make sure everyone knows what's going on, which if you'll, allow me to, again, just kind of briefly chat about the podcast, that I put together. That was really kind of the main idea that Rio and I had when we put it back together. We started the Vault podcast. We really wanted to provide people with a central place where they could go and understand what's happening in the scene, because there are events happening in Korea. There are events happening in Brazil. There's an entire scene happening here. There's so much going on in the scene, but you're never going to know about it because Embark isn't posting about it yet. They're just not there at this point. The scene is kind of disconnected. It's that those posts never get traction on Reddit. So where are you going to go? We wanted to provide an opportunity for that, as well as get to know people in the scene, because, and we're going to talk about this later, so much of esports, right, is about building the brands of the players and building those stories. And if you don't know the players, how are you going to do that? And that's why we've interviewed people like Atelko. We've interviewed people like Mickey, who's a player, also kind of the brains behind the starting of Prohubs, things like that. So we're doing interviews with these people behind the scenes. We're getting to talk about all these events. And so that's really where we wanted to start, is just make sure that the scene gets more tight knit and all the effort that these people are putting into the game actually gets seen.
Yeah, that's actually so crazy to hear, because I feel like that's exactly what we've been trying to do. We noticed that sort of gap. And I mean, you guys are definitely taking a little bit more of a competitive aspect to it, which I think is very missed.
For sure.
But just to see it happening, and, we want to be a part of that as well. And it's so cool to see people with like-minded ideas. I would love to keep talking about Prohubs, but I really want to get into where you got, or what steps you took to get where you are today. I mean, what drew you to casting? Let's get into that.
So this is actually the first game I've ever casted. At least in any sort of professional settings. I've done like small stuff with friends. We'd play Smash and I'd kind of, just have fun with it and stuff like that. But I never actually really did it. I've always loved casting though. Like, I've always been a decent player at games, but I knew I was never good enough to actually have any chance of competing. But I would watch casters and I would say, I think I could do that. And so I really enjoyed when they would talk about how they cast, the sort of tools that they used. And that was something I really enjoyed paying attention to. And so when I had the chance, when I started playing the finals, and especially around season 2, there was a major drop off, right? People started leaving the game. There weren't a lot of people around. And that really made me sad, because I love this game. I think this is one of the best games I've ever played. It's the only game that's ever pulled me away from Dota 2 and actually kept me away from Dota 2. So it spoke to me, and I wanted to make sure it kept happening. I wanted to do my part to keep the competitive scene flourishing. And I was like, well, this is the moment. If I'm not going to do it now, when am I ever going to do it? And I decided to jump in, start hosting tournaments, start doing casting. And then it kind of snowballed from there.
Yeah, that's actually really surprising. I'm going to say you do not seem like this is your first time doing this. I mean, you seem like a pro.
I appreciate that. I have been working on it, so I'm proud of that.
So real quick, because you've been obviously around this game since the beginning and things like that. So something I actually wanted to ask real quick is we played the game. I was in closed beta. I think Cody was in open beta with me. And then we played a little bit of season 1. And then we kind of dropped off because of the meta and things like that. But what, I guess, real quick, happened in season 2 to cause the drop? And do you feel like there's kind of been a little bit of a resurgence since then to bring players back? What do you think has been kind of contributing to that?
A big part of it for me is, I think, the attitude around gaming in general is a little bit toxic nowadays. There's so much focus on, content creators for all the goods that they bring. Also, it's easier to say negative things and get views than it is to say positive things and get views. We all know this. We all know about clickbait headlines, clickbait thumbnails. It's just the nature of the game, right?
I know a lot about it.
Right. So I feel like you see this cycle a lot. New game comes out, people try it out. It's a natural ebb and flow. Lots of people play the game. People start to step away from the game. Especially in the FPS genre, I feel like it's easy for people to then start to hate on the game really quickly, right? The meta starts to get a little bit stale. You start to figure things out. You hit kind of the end game in, quote unquote, of the FPS and their grind that they've put together. It's season 1, but it's like people want more. And so the streamers start to say negative things, And some of that's justified. There were some streamers in season 2 who dropped it pretty publicly, kind of crashed out on the game a little bit. And I get some of it, right? Like, you're trying to make a living. You can't survive on the finals, especially in season 2. It just was, the viewer base was not there, even when there were lots of players. People didn't want to watch it. So they say negative things. People start to parrot those because they watch these people. And then I think it's just a natural cycle that starts to drive people away. And then there becomes this attitude of like, oh, well, why will I play this? This person says it's a dead game. So I think that's probably the first part to why it kind of went down. I think the second part is that it's just too different. And I don't think people realized how different it was going to be as a game. Like, they didn't have things like Power Shift. They didn't have TDM. Those were not game modes at the very beginning. And those are such a good method of onboarding people, that you're throwing people into an objective-based shooter is always going to be more difficult. And so I think that was the second thing that kind of made it difficult for people to get into the game. But I do think it has had a resurgence.
I was gonna say, unfortunately, I have some friends that I tried to get into the game, and a couple of them really just did not like quick cash or any sort of those modes. They played TDM and they're like, "Oh, this is super fun," and then they go to play, quick cash or cash out, and it's just they are like, "I hate this. I hate it." So it's cool that those modes are there because that at least keeps some people on that normally wouldn't have liked the game.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, there's and I've talked about this a little bit. Is like I'm not really a TDM player. I've never enjoyed just the base TDM sort of like play style. I really enjoy objective focused games. Even back, playing Halo is always capture the flag, things like that. Like those were always my go-to game modes because I thrive on positioning. I've never been an aimer. I've always been a strategist, a position, heavy player. And so that's partially why this game spoke to me. But I understand why it didn't speak to some people. But I think that's why we are seeing people start to come back to the game. It's like the hardcore fan base stuck around, and that word of mouth is starting to turn around. People are starting to say, "Is that game dead?" And instead of saying that, they're now saying that game's still alive. And that is such a massive shift in people's perspective that they want to go check it out. And then they come back, and now you can play TDM and power shift, and you don't have to jump into quick cash, and you can understand how destruction works, how the gameplay works, how the weapons are, and then you can ease yourself into World Tour, whatever you want to do. It's an easier onboarding process, but that's taken time.
100%, yeah. I like one quick note is last week while I was traveling, I didn't get to really play the game, and we had our weekly update video coming out, and I went on Twitch, and for the first time, really spending time scrolling through the finals page to see the new gameplay of the new World Tour, to understand what it looks like. And shockingly enough, majority of streamers, not even large streamers, were playing ranked, not even World Tour, which is a polar opposite of what was happening in Season 5 when we were getting into the game. We hopped in, we thought about maybe getting into the content space a little bit, and we were like, well, what does the pro scene look like? We thought at the time World Tour was some esports circuit that was going on, not something in the game. And at that time, World Tour was the big mode, and now it's shifted over back to ranked. So do you think that kind of competitive spirit is starting to take off a little bit in, leading up to the inevitable major, hopefully in Season 8 that's coming?
I think so, yeah. Especially within, the people that stream. There's a lot of people that stream that are involved in the pro scene. And so within the visible side of the content creator community, you have a lot of people that are going to, be focusing on the ranked side of things. They're going to have their rank grind going on. I mean, Apo, is a big content creator, but even he is really focused on making sure he gets to those Ruby numbers at the end of the season, things like that. He's actually involved in the Pro League now, was a fill-in team as we, had a team drop, unfortunately. So, I think that the players, it's also, content creators and streamers tend towards ranked modes, I think, because they have so much time, and you can sink endless hours into something like ranked, whereas World Tour does have an endpoint, right? And then there's diminishing returns after that. Not to say that some people just play the game because it's fun, but the number going up is nice, right? So I think that's why a lot of people are looking towards ranked, is it's like they're starting to, and like you said, the attitude towards the game is starting to adjust towards competitive as we get towards the major, and people start thinking about that.
Cool. Yeah, and I also think, people like yourself and what Prohubs is doing and things like that are helping rein people back over to the ranked side as well. I watched Prohubs just the other day with Oppo's team. They played pretty well. It was exciting to see them. And, there's some familiar names where we were doing our little watch party here in Discord, and I was like, oh, that's Oppo's new team. Like, they just opened it, I think, today. Waltz put out a video about it. You should check that out. And so it's pretty cool. And so one thing about that, obviously, is with ranked becoming so big and the competitive scene becoming larger, there's a lot of people, who might be interested in getting into casting or putting themselves in a position like yours to where they can be involved in the scene and help it grow. So what is something that you think, if somebody watching this pod or listening to this pod is like, I really want to give casting a try, what is the advice that you would recommend to them starting at square zero?
Starting at square zero, you've never done it before. The most important thing is to find a community that's running customs. There are lots of those communities out there. You can find them in, I mean, pretty much every major server. The Ape Squad does this a lot. It's a little more closed off, but there are smaller servers. People like Misha Merch do a lot of customs. I try to do customs as often as I can, every Friday night for the most part. So there's lots of groups that do these small amounts of customs. And if you can get in with a group and you can just, hey, can I just jump in and spectate? I just want to spectate you guys, you're playing, and just start recording yourself. Because that's the big thing, right? Like, it's when there are people already in the space, like we're here with pro leagues, things like that, people to reach out to me. It's like, hey, I'd like to try casting. And that's great. And if you reach out to like someone like me and you say, hey, I'm really interested in casting, I'll do my best to get you in on a customs night and I'll let you do your thing. Because I want you to be able to get clips, because when you look at something like Pro League, because there are lots of people that want to cast for Pro League, if you have some clips and you have some footage that you can show me of you casting the finals, that's already puts you so far ahead, because we say, oh, this is how he does. And if you're good, then let's get you in. Let's let you have a shot. Or we can say, here are some things you can work on. So my biggest suggestion is find some people that are playing games, get them into a custom match, and just start recording yourself. Go through your paces, figure out what you sound like, listen back to yourself, and find out the sort of, verbal crutches that you rely on. Make yourself sound good, and then start reaching out to people that run customs. Reach out to me, reach out to the some of the Ruby grind guys. They'll let you cast some stuff.
So that sounds like I'll be hitting you up in 3 weeks' time. I got a portfolio working, okay? I got you.
I can't wait.
So in tandem with that, obviously people have watched some esports here and there, whether it's Call of Duty League, Overwatch League, Prohubs, etc. What do you think is something that casters do that people often don't notice? What happens behind the scene? How do you prepare? Like, what it goes into it off camera even that people just don't think about?
I'm glad you mentioned the prep side of it, because there is a lot of prep involved. Like, before we'll do the play dates, I want to know, hey, which groups are playing against which groups? Are there any storylines that I can bring out? That's one of the biggest things that I think casters really try to focus on, that if they do it right, sort of blends in, because your goal is to highlight the players and build their story. And so when I'm looking at something like Prohubs, for a bit, in Split 1, it was kind of the story of the off-meta heavies, right? Like Busy comes in with a minigun. Nobody's run minigun. He's also not running RPG, which is unheard of in competitive finals. He's not running an RPG, still doesn't run an RPG to this day. He's decided other stuff is better. That's crazy. We also have people like Llama. Skip, unfortunately, had to drop out, but these are two amazing sledge heavies, one in EU, one in NA. And they start running things that, again, nobody's playing at the highest level, and they're dominating with it. They're crushing these teams. And so as I'm like preparing for this, like, okay, well, let's see, this time Busy and Llama are playing against each other. Let's really kind of highlight these guys. So it is about like making sure you know what these people have been doing already. So when they pull off a big moment, your casting should be informed by what they've been doing and making sure that you can highlight why it's actually cool. Because there's, especially in the finals, there's so much happening at one time. It's the caster's job not just to commentate every single thing that's going on, but the stuff that they're doing that isn't immediately noticeable.
Yeah, I mean, I can't imagine casting like Cash Out or Quick Cash or any mode like that, because there's just so much happening and the map is so huge. There's no mini map, and it's like one swivel of the observer camera and you're like, oh my gosh, there's a whole nother thing going over there that nobody was looking at. So I don't know how you guys do it. It's incredible. It's really fun to watch because, like I said, I've seen it already where the observer, they pan over a little bit and it's like, oh, 3 teams are on this Cash Out where we thought they were still respawning or something. Like, it's just crazy. So
yeah, it kind of reminds me a lot of like Control in COD, the newer mode. It's I noticed a lot when you would watch like those pro games is they'll be looking at A and then you can see them like kind of frantically like, oh, we gotta go over to B. There's a ton of stuff going on. So that's one of those other things where, I mean, it's even worse in the finals, of course, because the maps are so big. Like, at least in COD, the maps are pretty tiny. Yeah. A is not that far from B. But, I mean, yeah, having to keep track of 2 cash outs across the maps, it's just, there's so many variables that, I mean, you got to be a different breed, dude. That's crazy.
It's taken a lot to get there, but yeah, we're starting to learn. There's been a learning process, right? Because it's a different game, and especially with cash out. So it's been a learning process for observers and casters to figure out how to make that work.
Yeah. So we've talked about cash out. We've mentioned power shift, TDM, things like that. So let's go ahead and jump into what Prohubs is, who's involved, how did it start, and then let's also dig into kind of like what is the play day structure currently.
Sure. All right. Yeah. So kind of starting at the very beginning, I guess. Prohubs is the brainchild of Mickey primarily, but also people like Someone. That's an actual player, not just me not knowing who they are. Mickey and someone, two of the main people that started off the Prohubs, basically as a way to combine a lot of the top tier servers. When the game started off, obviously higher player count, there were some disconnected servers, and as that started to dwindle, they decided they were going to be the hub for that. And so they were hosting lots of scrims, especially in season 3, when there was no longer, ranked. They started to really focus on providing opportunities for people to daily play pickup games. They have a system where anybody can pick it up. You get roles based on how you're doing, and you could just jump into a queue with a bunch of other people, get to play some custom matches, and really focus on improving at the game. And that was the real goal, was to be the place for you to improve as a professional player, in sort of hopes to build that. At that time, Breakout was still happening. Breakout Esports was a group that were running a league from around end of season 1, I believe, to finishing at the in season 4. So they ran an entire season that they did, and so Prohubs was essentially kind of helping aid and bring people to that. But once Breakout finished up, they decided not to renew with the finals, and Prohubs realized this was the time for them to step in and actually be that professional area, be the place. So they started hosting some tournaments. There's been a bunch of Prohubs Sundays, is what they call them. It's one-day tournaments, throw a bunch of teams into the ringer, and then coming up into the new year with the announcement of the major, the big goal was, how do we prepare the scene for the major? And so that was the real step towards building up this season 0 of the Pro League. How do we create the first league format for the game, and what does that look like? Because that's still a very unexplored territory, right? And I guess like a question for you, before I jump into the structure of the play dates, but before this, like, I know you guys were, have you gone back, looked at any of the Breakout stuff? Did you watch any of the previous like pro stuff that was happening before?
I personally am not. I didn't even realize Breakout really got involved. I mean, season 1.
Yeah, I was gonna say.
Yeah,
I didn't know either.
Yeah. Season 1. I mean, we fell off. I think we kind of met playing game battles and Call of Duty and things like that. So when new COD titles came out, we really sank a lot of hours into that with scrimming and things like that. And I think like Cold War or something, it came out around this time. So that drew our entire attention over there for till now, really.
Oh yeah.
And yeah.
And that makes sense too, because as honestly, what's funny is that Embark actually wasn't even aware that Breakout was happening until we were at the World Championships that Breakout was running. Again, one of the reasons I started the Vault podcast with Rio is that these big things are happening and nobody knows about them. And we want them to know, because there are people, really talented people working on it. And so moving into this year, that's where the idea of the Pro League came in, is Embark hasn't announced their thing yet. It's a major system, which, it's going to be a major. It's going to have qualifiers and stuff getting up to it, but there's no league structure around that. Is Embark going to do a league structure? Should they even do a league structure? These are things I have very hard opinions about. But at the end of the day, the major's happening, but how do you build up the teams to get there? So they introduced the Pro League structure, and the way this works, and I'm really excited about this because I think the way they structured it is hopefully the way things will go forward. Because most tournaments have been primarily 3v3. It's just been a final round. They wouldn't run cash out at all because, trying to really focus on the hard competitive side of the game. You don't want to feel like you can get third party. You don't want to get griefed out. It can be really, that's hard enough in ranked sometimes. It's even harder when you're playing for money. So for the most part, that's never been used in tournaments. I used to run in a lot of my tournaments and try different like group stages. And that's where things have come down. So with the Pro League format, we just finished split 1. There's 2 splits here. What the splits are is 4 straight, not straight days, but 4 days of cash out. We have 12 teams. Every play day, they're broken into a group of 4. They play 4 matches of cash out in a row. They earn points based on where they place. First place is 100 points, second is 70, so on and so forth. And they get points for every kill. So even if you get in 4th place, if you just got griefed out and you still got a lot of kills, you still get points. And what I like about this is that it averages out over a long time period, right? Because normally you're playing cash out. If you get dropped down, you get griefed out. It's not as good. You're going to be unhappy about that. But over the 30-some games that these people are playing, the teams that are better are going to get to the top. You are going to show that you deserve to be at the top when you play that many games. And that's what I really appreciate about the first section of how they've played so far.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think you guys have it down. I can't imagine doing it any other way. I think it's really cool to have that sort of 3v3 setup, but you're kind of losing what the finals is. And, you know, when you play cash out, I mean, that is the finals. That's what it's always been. So
yeah,
leaving that in the competitive scene, I think is essential. The way you guys have it, like, being done with the kills, I mean, you have the game stretched over with the total point system, you know, kind of getting together at the end. There's no other way to do it. I think you guys nailed it. And if, respectfully, I'll say it now, if Embark doesn't do this system, I think they made the wrong decision.
Yeah. We're gonna have to see what the major looks like. You know, I think there's a lot of caveats with the major, right? In that the major is essentially marketing, right? That's all that is what the major is. It is not them. I mean, it's in some ways them kind of showing a dedication to esports, but it's mostly marketing. And I'm sure we'll kind of dig into that further later, right? So I'm sure there's going to be caveats as they look towards format because they want to show off certain parts of their game. I agree. I think our format is best, and I think it should be similar to what's used. But I do wonder if they are going to try to highlight other aspects in an effort to make that approachable. And we'll see how that goes. You know, there's definitely still some tweaking we have to do with the league system. But, you know, we have to see how this finishes out. You know, we're still, like I said, we just finished Split 1, or we finished Split 1, we've just finished Split 2. So at this point, there are 3 more play days. Probably by the time this airs, there's going to be 2 more play days left. And then we go into a regional playoffs where each region just has a 3v3 normal kind of tournament setup where we get to see, instead of dealing with the chaos of cash out, how good are the teams in that hyper-competitive, hyper-focused 3v3. So you get a balance. They earn a lot of points from there too. So if you're really bad at cash out, but you're very good at 3v3, you have a chance to still prove yourself. And then we're going to pit both groups against each other in a final huge 3v3 tournament with NA versus EU, and they're going to see who's truly best. So that's going to be that's the overall format. Again, the server's a little rough, so we wish there was a better way, but you got to eventually pit the two against each other. NA and you are the two that are doing the most with the scene right now, so it's going to be fun to watch.
Yeah, it sounds like there's going to be a Finals World Cup, which I'm stoked for. And I'm really excited. You know, we've talked about it this week with and you've gone into kind of the playoff structure and how that's going to look. But I'm really excited to see some of these teams, you know, basically have to change their brains on how they're going to play the game going into that new playoff structure as well. I mean,
yeah,
we saw Bricked absolutely dominate this past week. It's going to be interesting to see if they go 3v3, if they start to struggle in that kind of mentality instead. So I'm really stoked for it.
Yeah, I was going to say too, I love that you're also still incorporating that 3v3 structure. I think it's probably best that towards the lower parts of the, you know, the whole tournament and the whole, that you have that 4-team setup, and then you slowly kind of move to the finals. And I think it's in the name, you know, it's perfect. And so slowly getting more competitive with the just 3v3 structure is perfect. I'm so excited to see this keep going, man.
Yeah.
It's so sick.
It's all about building intensity, right? Like there's kind of this flow to it. And hopefully, I mean, what I kind of like about the format we've put together is the format I hope feels like a game of cash out, right? First cash out. I mean, it's important, but it's fine, right? If you lose it, you can come back. And it all starts to build until you get to that final cash out of the match. And hopefully this feels the same. Cash out games matter, but you can still come back. Playoffs matter, but they get more, you know, they matter more, but you can still find a way through if you did well at the first cash out. And then when it gets to the final, the interregional major, all of a sudden, all the chips are down. If you don't win this now, it's over for you. So it's this ramping intensity with matches that start to matter more as you get into the system.
Yeah, that's so sick. I'm so excited, man. I'm sitting here grinning.
Yeah, it's gonna be cool.
So going into that, I mean, is there anything else you want to cover in terms of what Prohubs is? Anything else in that sense?
Yeah, I want to shout out the people working on the team behind Prohubs. We have some incredibly talented devs that have been working on the backside. I mean, there's a website that we have where you can see the points that update, you can see all the teams. A lot of work has gone into that, making sure that it can be updated live so that we can do the scores and we don't have to wait until the very end. Devs, Ved, and RMR are doing God's work over there. Just incredible work from them. the entire staff team: Burrita, Human, Gopher, Mickey, someone, Deso. I know I'm forgetting a couple people, and I apologize, guys. But there's like everyone working there is just putting so much into this and making sure that it is going as smoothly as it is. So I want to shout out to those guys.
Yeah, and one thing I will mention and just mention again is the fact that this is community ran. It's not Embark backed necessarily. I mean, it's something really put together by just people who enjoy the game and want to see it thrive. So that's something that's, really enticing to me to watch it and support it even more. So yeah, major kudos to all of them.
Yeah, entirely community run. One day, Embark is, I think their focus is really on getting to that major, and maybe once we get into the new year, if that goes well, there'll be Embark support for these events, and we'll start to really kind of get them maybe shouting some stuff out, start posting about it. Maybe there'll be some support of some nature. But right now, we're really just paving the way. This is the pioneer stretch, right? We got to make sure, we got to prove that it can happen, and then we have to figure out how to move on from there.
Yeah, I'm hoping they do, honestly. I mean, it would, in my opinion, it would be kind of a no-brainer to not shout you guys out, because it's going to get people excited. It's going to get people ready for what's coming, and that is so valuable as a business to have people excited and build that. So, and you guys are doing it for free. You know what I mean? So why not?
Yeah, the kindness of your own hearts.
Right. Just for the love of the game, dude.
So we mentioned earlier, you put out a video about Oppo and filling a new slot and kind of putting a team together really quick. Can you give us a rundown on the Split 2, we're calling it Roster Mania, that we experienced this past week?
Yeah, so one of the things we did, especially because this is Season 0, teams signed up, and we know that like there's going to be growing pains. So we wanted to give people the opportunity to kind of swap rosters, shake things up if they needed a little bit, kind of move around as they needed to. And so, like you said, I put out a video that kind of highlighted a lot of the changes. EU, for the most part, pretty stable. Although there were some pretty, like some teams picked up a couple subs. They have other players they can throw in now. Carnifex, he's streaming a lot of the time. I'm sure you've seen him on the Twitch boards. He's now a sub as well. So I believe he's a sub 1 for Aimers Red, I believe. So he's a sub. So like things like that, people have dropped in. There's a couple changes on their side. The NA side, like you said, Apple's team jumped in. There was a big shakeup over there. We've had teams that have done really well, like Team Brick with Busy, STN, Stewie. But then some teams like Scallywags and the Burger Boys with the Police Stack just did not do really well. And the Burger Boys just could not continue anymore. There were some difficulties. There were just some internal struggles. And so the team just kind of imploded a little bit, scattered the way. Belize stayed in. He's on his way to Scallywags now. And then Appo and crew decided to jump in. Bless their hearts. I really appreciate it because they jumped in halfway through an intense split, coming at the bottom. It's an uphill battle for them, but I hope it doesn't burn them out, because I'd love to see them come back in the future. So yeah, some big shakeups, especially in the NA side of things, which, I mean, let's be honest, for anybody who's followed esports overall, we all know that NA has never been the most stable of regions, so it feels appropriate that they're struggling here too.
It's our year. I believe it. I believe we can do it at some point. But yeah, that reminds me of like when Cloud9 finally won a Boston Major for CSGO. I was watching in my living room with some college roommates, and I was like, this is like, you don't understand how big this is for the people that don't watch esports and were in the room with us. So love to see NA come up at some point, but we'll see.
So with that, we have a question. NA versus EU, who are you taking?
Ooh, see, that's complicated. That's a complicated question. EU is a little bit more disciplined in their play. They play very tight. They're very good with their kind of set pieces, things of that nature. And you'll see even too, like, again, the teams were not a ton of changes. There were some slight shuffles. Again, you can kind of see them in the video, but they were too small to really kind of dig into for the most part. And that's why you also still see more double mediums in EU than you do in NA. They really like to have kind of that very seamless movement on that team. They put a high value on that double medium composition. So you see more of that there. That said, NA has better lights. It's just true. You put I swear I would put money on this. You put all the lights currently playing in the top level, NA wins every time. You got people like Commit, you got people like Graduating, people like Uni. Uni is the absolute aim god. You're going to see a lot of him when we get to the 3v3s. He's just going to be popping off. So And not to say that there's slouches on the EU side of things, but I'd take an NA light over an EU light pretty much any single day. I think mediums probably go in favor of EU. People like Atelco, that's Atelco is absolute god on the thing. Mickey as well, fantastic with that medium. So I'd send mediums that way. Heavy's a shakeup. There's so many great heavies in the game. Velo has been running Sledge. Lamp, of course, on Holthouse Finest, busy with his minigun. Skip is another EU Sledge player. Too many amazing heavies to count. I think they're a bit of a wash, but I think there's a dynamic play that NA has, especially in cash out, that I think could give them the edge. Overall, most events actually, NA kind of comes out on top. And when we've had cross-regional play, so NA I think is currently the leader, but because we're separating the regions, it's yet to be seen who's the better after we have this intense play period of the play dates.
All to be excited for the World Tour whenever that happens, or the World Cup, I guess.
Right.
So you brought up a point about actually like two mediums being in Europe more often. We've obviously caught a lot of the NA play days when we can because we're NA and we work during the day. But I try to watch EU when I can during the work day. Don't tell my boss. Anyways, so we see a lot of 1-1-1, one light, one medium, one heavy in NA. I'd argue almost exclusively over the past week or two from what I've seen. So if somebody were to start wanting to get into this scene, maybe not at this level, but they play like a casual night or a community tournament or things like that, what is the quote unquote meta that you're recommending to them? What do you think is the recipe for success for people that are getting their feet wet but aren't sure really what they should be, loading into with their team?
Yeah, light, medium, heavy is, like you said, it is the predominant play. There are some teams that flex to double medium, and there's a specific reason for that. It's because the light player is such a crucial part of your team that often you have what we call the light duel is such a key factor, especially in 3v3, because they will often try to look for each other specifically. You'll see lights run thermal vision exclusively to find each other.
I know all about that. Always.
I was sitting here, I was like, don't tell Cody this, man. He's stroking his little ego over there. I already see him grinning.
They're always coming for me.
But what's interesting, actually, and this was really highlighted in some recent events, actually, where there are teams playing with light, medium, heavy, and you'll run up against an absolute god on light who just never misses his shot, is just going to take you out from across the map. And we've seen teams switch off to a double medium specifically because they know their light player can't compete and they need to make sure their light's not going to die. So light, medium, heavy overall is the best composition. But in specifically 3v3, people sometimes switch off just because that light duel can matter so much. But there really is a rock, paper, scissors happening. Like, light is crucial because if you're not running that, all of a sudden heavy becomes way stronger. There's a reason that medium, heavy was the composition for season 1 through almost the entirety of season 3. It was just medium, heavy. And part of the reason for that is because light was unplayable. It wasn't strong enough. And as soon as light showed up into the meta, the glitch grenade, you're going to see every single light run glitch grenade. That is the biggest thing. The mobility of light gives them the ability to scout people out. Information is key. Information is king. But also the glitch grenade, mesh shield and dome shield are going to just drop with that glitch grenade, and that is massive utility loss. And all of a sudden, the heavy is half as effective as it used to be. So that's why you don't see double heavy anymore, because medium light is still such a fearsome part of the match. So even if you're going to lose that 1v1 battle, sometimes it's still important to stay on light just because gateway exists. Dash and Invis exist to get that location. Sonar grenade is coming into the meta a little bit more so people can find out where the enemy team is. There's so much utility that light brings, and people don't think of light as a util player. But if you're playing at the highest level, everybody has to bring utility. Your heavy needs to be focusing on domes. Your medium needs to be focusing on pads, zip lines, defibs, and your light has to be focused on recon.
Yeah, I was going to say, I kind of talked about it a bit in the video I did before, where I really think that, weirdly enough, light has some of the best team play based gadgets. And you wouldn't think that because people think of light as like the super selfish class, which it can be. But I mean, I don't think people realize how good gateway is when you use it with your team, or how good sonar can be when you use it with your team. It's crazy.
Yeah, no, it is really, really important. And the second thing I'd say is that generally you obviously want to stay tight as a team, right? But when you look at these, if you do decide to go watch some of these pro league games, keep an eye on the positioning of these players. You're almost always going to have two people play very, very tight, and one person is going to be off a little bit on their own just to make sure they can cover all the angles. Normally, medium and heavy play really, really close because heavy is a really good class, but it is made a really good class in part because the medium is going to provide your heavy with a pad. Your medium is going to demat walls. They're going to provide them with the movement. Heavy, as it's played right now, doesn't use a lot of movement, doesn't use goo gun, things like that unlock movement. We've seen some players, some teams, like Team Diff, for example, with Llama, who is a sledge player. He's the one running by himself, actually. So you'll have your medium and your light playing together, and then he's going to play off by himself and try and surprise teams with that sledge. And then when the opening in the chaos ensues, the other two are going to come on and follow up with the follow-up from range. So, but even in those instances, there's still generally, you obviously need to play close enough that you can back up your solo guy, but most of the time, you're going to be running kind of a detached 2-1 combo.
I'm going to throw a little live grenade, and then we're going to run away from it. I just want to point out to all my ranked teammates, or the random third that Cody and I get, not once have we said 2 lights is the meta, okay? So just saying. Just saying, it hasn't been mentioned once. All right. And that's it. Anytime I see it from here on, I'm linking this podcast to them. So there you go.
It's a bold choice.
It happens all the time.
Yeah, he's spitting. It's because they're fighting for the same thing, and you end up just fighting each other on your team more than fighting the other team.
So one thing I did want to touch on real quick, actually, is like weapon loadouts. We've obviously talked about gadgets and things like that, but you actually mentioned that Lamp, for example, is running the minigun. And this past week, especially in the EU matches, I saw a lot more of the ARN being used. Do you think that these new weapons that people thought were kind of mid, not so good, do you think that these are actually becoming kind of towards that meta conversation, or do you think it's more like people are just kind of play testing it at like the higher level to see how it can keep up?
I think they are actually in discussions with meta, if not meta already. I'll touch on minigun first. It's meta. Minigun is meta. At least in cash out, there's a little more chaos in cash out. I think when we get to 3v3, we're gonna have to see how it performs. I think we may see some people switch off of it just because the mobility and the limitations on that, especially if they do end up nerfing some sides of that. So I'm not sure how minigun performs in 3v3, but cash out, 100% meta. We started off, Busy was the first one to run it. Nobody expected it to be good. And we were even joking about it. We were like, oh, it's the first play day. He's kind of having fun. And then he never switched off of it, and he kept winning. And we were like, wait, is it good? Like, what are we looking at here? Minigun's not supposed to be a good weapon, but props to Embark because it's been good. It has not been overpowered, at this point. There was one play day where we saw a minigun, we saw an SA-12, we saw a Lewis gun, saw a sledge, and we saw an M60, all in the same day, by lights. And it was, that's crazy. Like, that's actually amazing. And they were all doing well. I mean, all the weapons can hold their own. Lewis gun and M60, a little bit lower on the totem pole, but you can still run them. So I think minigun, strong meta, probably one of your top 3 picks, top 2 picks probably, but there's still options when it comes to the heavy side of things, which is exciting. The ARN is kind of, I'd give it it's like the second slot, basically. XP is king. If you're really at that level, you're probably running XP. But the ARN is not far behind a lot of people, especially with longer range. It just has more range to it. And the LH1 is kind of dead. So, I've seen a couple people try to bring it up again, but if the other guy's running anything that's has some decent range, it's just the ARN has its niche, and we've actually seen quite a lot of play. You guys saw it quite a bit, so it's actually in quite a decent position. Repeater is we don't talk about repeater. It doesn't exist. It doesn't exist.
Yeah, every time I use a repeater, I find it worse. I don't know what the problem is. At first I thought it was B, but everybody keeps agreeing, so I guess I'm onto something with that.
Hey, I'm just saying, I dropped that ARN video saying this update is game changing, and people were like, "You're smoking, dude. The ARN's bad. It's the worst gun in the game." And I'm like, just saying, I'm gonna pull it out of Sam's book. I'm pulling up the podcast, dude. It's said here.
Yep.
Oh yeah.
It's said here.
Right? Pulling out the voice notes of this.
I'm just saying.
Right.
Well, it's like you put out actually last week the I guess 2 weeks ago now, the 6.4 update video, Cody, and you talked about the minigun change, and you were like, yeah, I still think it's mid. And I was like, I'm seeing pros rip with this thing. They might just be really good, but I mean,
I think it is one of those weapons where you just have to be a different breed with it. It requires so much. I mean, you have to baby the thing. You have to, everything that you're using, you know, just like the spin up, the time it takes to just fire that thing if you don't keep it spun up, and then the reload. So if anyone's going to be good with it, it's going to be the pros.
Oh, yeah.
It's going to be the pros.
I'll add on to that as well, that you should, if you're watching this and you're interested in seeing how pros play with this, look up Busy on YouTube, because Busy OW, puts out videos and basically records how his team, you can see his perspective of the Pro League play days. And he's running his minigun, and there's two things. A, he has a really solid team with him. If you're running solo as a heavy in, you know, your gold, you know, silver through plat, you know, ranked games, I probably wouldn't pull out the minigun. I don't know if it's going to be useful for you at that rank, just because his medium is always there to give him his pad. His medium is always there to, he spins it up, and then his medium drops the wall. Boom, he's already shooting, right? Like, his team is there to back him up, and that's a big part of it. The second thing is, like you said, he's also just so good at it. If you watch these videos, the movement he has, there's a tech where you can like slide cancel while you're spinning it up, and then like jump, and you're like moving basically at full speed in between spinning it up and things like that. There's like a really specific tech that makes it so these top level players can mitigate with a very, like, they have to be, you see them mess it up every now and then because it's hard to do, but when they nail it down, they can mitigate some of the difficulty of that mobility, and that makes it easier for those top players to make it work at a high level.
Yeah, I feel like with the time I was kind of using it, just because I'm a little bit of a movement demon coming from light, I feel like I was kind of doing something like that a little bit, where you get that sort of weird vault angle, and it was
exactly,
yeah, it was so sick. With that though, we kind of want to move into another question, which is there any things on your wish list, which I think it can encompass everything? I mean, in terms of maybe making the pro hubs easier for you, or maybe just something being added to the game that you think would change everything. Any cool ideas?
Yeah. Well, I'll give you the fun answer first, because there's something I've been wanting for a long time. I want 2 grapple charges, man. Like, let me live out my Spider-Man fantasy, okay? Nobody picks this Nobody picks this specialization. It's not going to break it if you give it a second one. Let me have 2. Why is that so hard?
Yeah, I'm so with you. I think we should also add 5 dashes. I think we just get them both, right? I think we'll be good.
Let's do 2 cloaks while we're at it too.
Well, okay, well, we're getting a little hasty. Okay, chill out. Okay, let's just do grapple and dash. Okay, just grapple and dash.
No, double grappling hook would be amazing. I'd also love different sights on the sniper. It's probably too strong if you do that, but give me like an ACOG sight or something. You know, just let me shake it up. If it's too strong, pull it back. I don't know. On kind of the casting side of it, like the big thing, and I think this is something we're going to see as we move into kind of the next couple seasons, they've had some major updates to how we can use spectator. The play days have benefited massively from that, because we can now choose which player we want to spectate. Before, you basically had all you could do was cycle through a list of players to get their player perspective, and we would just have to rapidly click to get the one that we wanted to get to. Now we can choose, and that's an absolute game changer. It's made things better. Our free cam is better, but the big thing we still need is we need better overlay. And this is not just the casting perspective, but this goes to kind of the future and making sure that people want to watch the game, right? Because it's easy to watch the game from one player's perspective because you can see what's going on, they're talking about it. But when you're watching it from above, it can be hard sometimes to know what's going on. And we as casters try to mitigate that. We try to do what we can to make sure you understand what's happening. And we have ways of dealing with that. Like on the side, often we'll have a second screen that has has another person loaded into the game just for scoreboards, so we can see when teams are wiped or when there's like one person left alive. Kill feed has made that easier, but there needs to be an overlay so that you as a spectator can watch and you can see exactly who is dead and what class they are, because that is going to inform things. Like, it's easy for me to say, oh, this player's alive, but if you as a spectator don't have to wait for me to say that, you can see that it's a 3-on-1 without me telling you it's a 3-on-1. And that makes it so much more fun to see. The other thing I really want to have is I want to have cash out steals, plugs, and successful cash outs in the kill feed. I think that would be that'd be really cool from a spectator view, but the way they have it set up here as well, there's no reason I can't see when my teammate plugs, show that in the kill feed. And if somebody steals from me, I know exactly who stole from me, show that in the kill feed. It's more information, but they're adding so much other stuff anyways. I think that would only add and help to the not only the spectator perspective, but also just playing the game normally. I think it'd just be beneficial.
Yeah, that's honestly, I agree with you 100%. It's a little weird though, because I feel like they're currently kind of taking away information in ranked.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, it's kind of a dual-edged sword there where, I mean, I agree with you. I'm totally for it. I think the more information, the better. It makes high-level play that much higher level because they're able to interpret that information. And I think taking away information just kind of makes that gap further where pros are just going to be better, and it's hard for people to catch up. They're going to have better ways of getting information. One thing I will say is I think it's Overwatch that does it really well, and I would actually love a similar setup where you have health bars and, you know, the class all there. Whatever team you're spectating, you just have that. I mean, being able, especially, I mean, maybe from a caster perspective, just being able to throw up health bars of each team that you want would be probably huge for you guys.
Oh, yeah.
Just having like that 3-3 setup and then having that health bar that's already on the UI.
For sure.
Huge.
And I'm sure you've seen it every now and then when you're watching, but sometimes the spectator will flash the scoreboard. You know, you'll see it pop up for a second or two. Not really long enough for you guys to see anything. For a caster, it means the world because we actually get to see who's dead, who's alive, things like that. We know what we're looking for. And that's also like, I mean, when you see when you're watching somebody on Twitch and they flash the scoreboard and you're like, I got to pause that. Hold up. What happened? You know, like it's the same thing for us. Like you guys can't see information. We need the scoreboard to see information. So yeah, adding that information so it's easier at a glance, it makes everybody's life easier because the less information that I as a caster have to give the spectator, the more I can focus on the more fun parts of casting and focus on their individual highlights instead of having to consistently update everyone. It's a 3v2 right now. It's a 3v3. It's down to a 3v1. Now it's a 2v2. You know, that's not fun. What is fun is focusing on the highlights and the great plays that are going on.
Yeah, I totally agree. I mean, imagine if Smash was just them constantly telling you what percentage they were at.
Right?
You know what I mean? It's like, okay, we don't need to know that. Like, tell me more. Like, what's going on, like, with this guy's life?
Yeah.
So, tell me the cool stuff.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I totally agree.
Yeah. There's so many intricacies to this game, and being able to explain to people why what they saw is really cool is one of the most enjoyable parts of casting.
I could tell you my only biggest wish list as a viewer was being able to custom select team colors or something, because it's like you got 3 different shades of orange.
Oh,
it's
yeah.
kind of hard to tell who's who sometimes when they're all on top of each other.
We've tried different colorblind options. Like we've tried a lot of things, and there are some colorblind options that we've tried as well, and it's just, it changes the colors too much. Like, you know, like there's one colorblind option that has green, which is great. I'd love to see green, and I know why they don't have that normally, but in a spectator view, it'd be fine. But then it makes like the cash outs white, you know, and it's weird. It throws things off, and so I agree that actually would be a huge wish list as well.
Yeah, definitely from the spectator side. I mean, that's primarily where I would want to see it, because, you know, when you're spectating all 4 teams, that's when it's really noticeable versus when you're just playing. So, any other topics that you want to talk about before we move on? Any other wish lists items to the game specifically?
I really love to see them add more variants that really change the map. I know people are like, I wish we'd gotten a new map, and I get that, but you even said the maps are huge in this game. Like, you know, the new map comes out and it takes you a day or two to really understand all the intricacies of it. If you're playing consistently, if you're playing, like some people only have a couple hours a week, it's going to take them a couple weeks to really understand the new map because they might not get it all the time. That's not to say we're at max maps. We definitely need more. Like probably about 10 might be 10 might be a sweet spot, something like that, you know? Like we definitely need some more. But I dislike the narrative of, oh, they didn't give us a map, they're getting lazy. The rework, I think, was a big step, and I think there was a recent tease from Oscar that there's a Kyoto rework in the works as well. Wouldn't be surprised about that. So I like them going back, revisiting maps that didn't get a great reception, but I also want to see more things like Duck and Cover completely changes how Monaco plays. Sandstorm totally changes how Vegas plays. Give me a Cis Horizon variant that like destroys the museum or something like that, you know, or adds like crevices in between the buildings so you can actually fall off the map. Like, give me something that changes a map completely.
Yeah, that might be one of the sickest ideas I've ever heard, that Cis Horizon one. I'd actually love that so much.
Right?
In terms of the Kyoto, I mean, just to bring up like variants, like I can't imagine how differently Kyoto would play if those 2 towers weren't there.
Yeah.
It would be an entirely different map.
Entirely different map. Yeah. Just like change some things up a little bit and add some more variants because the maps are so big. And because of how cash out works, you always approach a site a little bit differently because the destruction might be slightly different. if you just add in some new variants, it's like Elevated Structures Monaco and Elevated Structures Kyoto is a completely different map than the map without those. You know, you play it completely differently. And so if you add similar concepts to the maps, it's almost like a new map. Almost like a new map. That's also more palatable for players that don't have 50 hours a week.
Yeah, I was gonna ask. You guys might be able to call me out on it. I'm not sure. Does Kyoto, when it's snowing, was the water ice?
Yes.
It is? Oh, okay.
It was.
I was gonna say, I'm like, that's another great idea.
Yeah.
It's not anymore.
It's not anymore.
Yeah.
I think it was better.
That should be one, though. Yeah, I mean, having the water be ice, or, I mean, a crazy one would be the water's lava or something.
Lava? Yeah. No, I'm with you. I'm with you. You're cooking a little bit here.
That would be great. Heavies would probably hate themselves, I'm sure. Heavies would hate themselves.
Yeah. The water right now is the most brutal thing ever. If you get stuck in it, it's just disgusting. Ruins the whole flow of the game. So, yeah. Well, cool. Moving on, I think, to our final topic. What does the finals need to elevate its competitive status in comparison to other esport titles? I guess specifically competitive FPS and where they are today.
The biggest thing that it needs is stability. And that's easy. That's easier said than done, and really depends on what your definition of stability is. There was a big there was like a video that went out a couple years ago where they like ranked esports in tiers, and these happen every now and then. You know, like obviously your tops, you have things like League, CS:GO, Valorant, Dota. You get to tier 2, and it's like Rocket League, Smash, things like that, right? I think the finals can sit comfortably in a tier 3 position, you know, for a while, and I don't think it needs to get past that to be in a stable position. Like you're probably not gonna have Liquid coming in and signing a finals team. You're probably not gonna have 100 Thieves come in and sign a team. But you can have like smaller investors that are like, here, it's like you're not gonna earn a salary per se, but we'll pay for plane fare, or you might get a small salary that like kind of it allows you to maybe invest your maybe you work half-time job or something like that, right? And that comes down to Embark making sure that the path is open for other people to come in and run leagues. The Prohubs is going to continue. We really like how this has gone. There's been a lot of great reception for it. And so we're going to take the format, we're going to update it, we're going to figure out what needs to be changed, and we're going to keep doing it. But one league is not enough. There needs to be more. There need to be tournaments on the side as well. You need more options for people to play. And if you don't get into the league, what are you going to do? You need other options to play as well. You need another tournament to be in, another like lower tier league, maybe just, smaller 1, 2, 3 day events, things like that. And that only happens if there are other organizations that are willing to come in and take a chance on the game and say, hey, let's run a season. And they only do that if they see that it's working for some people. That's a big part of what we're trying to prove at Prohubs, that you can do it. And also B, that they know they're going to get the support from Embark that they need. Because especially when you're a dev like that, I mean, the thing is, like the nature of being a pro player is that sometimes they get banned. And you need a line to Embark to say, hey, this guy got banned. He's not actually cheating. We've checked his PC. We know he's not hacking. He's playing in 2 hours. You need to unban him, right? Like those happen sometimes. And then it's just basic stuff where sometimes bugs will show up and you need to talk to Embark directly and be like, hey, this is a game-breaking bug. Can you help us in X way? Or maybe like Embark provides a custom server that you can play on. Things like that nature, right? Like there needs to be a structure in place for Embark to talk to these people, and that communication is not there right now. And that's one of the areas where things sometimes can struggle. And so that's kind of one of the big things that needs to come in is Embark is putting a giant sign up into the sky right now with this major. They're saying, hey, we're open for business. And they need to follow through with that and make sure that when people come to that, their door and say, hey, I want to do something, that they're receptive to it and willing to provide the help that needs to be there.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. I think you summed it up perfectly. I think one of the biggest issues is I feel like partially maybe they kind of announced this whole major thing a little too early.
A little bit.
Especially with they just kind of announced it, and I don't feel like they're talking about it too much, which I think is fine in a lot of cases. But with something like esports, you kind of need to be on top of it constantly like a baby.
Yeah.
Because if you're not, then people are going to lose interest very quickly.
Yeah. And,
especially, sorry. No,
oh, no,
but,
no, I don't want to interrupt you. I apologize.
No, you're good. But, like, if you guys could be the challengers, Like if you're familiar with like Valorant, they have Valorant challengers, or
Yeah.
you know, COD had, what was it?
Challengers, Overwatch had contenders, things like that. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, there needs to be pipelines to constantly be getting new players, because people are going to lose interest. I mean, if someone plays, especially in esports, I mean, the life period of a player is not very long. I mean, you have people like, you know, Scump, who went way longer than anybody thought he could have. And that guy's still a GOAT. But yeah, I mean, nobody wants to be playing the finals for 10 years. You know,
No,
nobody.
unless there's an incentive to do so, right? Like,
Right.
You know, unless you end up in a situation with League where you can be Faker and you can play the game for
Right.
over a decade, and your career's secured. You need like you said, people need to be able to know that there's some stability in that, and a lot of that also comes down to, can you as a player build your brand beyond just playing? Which again is something that we're trying to do on Prohubs, and something that I've been trying to do with Rio on the Vault, is give players a chance to get interviewed, show their personality a little bit, because esports has always been about the players. There are, I mean, like, Overwatch tried to make it about the teams, and that kind of died. There are a lot of reasons it died. It's not 100% on that. But I mean, like, when you think about teams, right? You think about the players in the teams. Like, there are some people who are like, I support Liquid, and I don't care who's on the squad. But for the most part, people fall. Like, if Faker left and went to a different team, you would follow Faker. You know, you don't really care. You know, you follow Hungrybox. You don't care that he's on Liquid. You pay attention to Hungrybox, right? That's the angle. And so, I mean, like, can you name? You know, like, I'm sure you guys are watching it, right? But can the average person name more than 2 players that are in the Pro League, you know? And that's the problem, is that if you don't have that ability to show yourself off on the big stage, there needs to be this consistency of play where it's like, hey, every Wednesday, every Saturday, there's a game to watch. You want to watch some top tier finals? Here's where you go to watch it. It's happening all the time. Oh, look, here's that player that you saw last week. He's playing again, you know? You need consistency in the scene. Otherwise, people aren't going to stick around, because there's so much other stuff vying for their attention.
Yeah, I would even say, I think the best goal forward is having a tab in game that shows you that schedule and shows you the players. I know there's a couple games that have done it before, and I think that's the best way, because it screams at you as soon as you get into the game. You're like, hey, here's the pro thing going on. And you're like, oh, let me check it out. I just have to hit A, and I can see everything.
I mean, Marvel Rivals is doing it in an incredible way right now, if you haven't seen that. And they've been doing it since, I think, the alpha. I played the first alpha of the game, and with their championship league, or their tournament that they did for alpha, betas, and now the game in general, you can not only see the scores of the games and who's playing, you can jump right into the game and watch it, just like a caster. Like, I would argue, if you're somebody who wants to get into casting, that's a good way to even at least practice your skills. Just go watch one of those games and act as if you're casting while following the players around.
Yeah.
So
100%. That's exactly what we need to have eventually. And, for people to be able to know it exists, and to be able to find it and know who they're going to watch. And I guess, like, to kind of jump on that as well, for those still listening, well, first off, thank you for getting this far and listening to me this long. But also, there's this topic, like, when people bring up esports, right? There was a whole discussion of esports, and the 100,000 major got announced. And a lot of the comments on Reddit were, oh, this is the death of the game. You know, like, they're going to balance the game for the top players. It's over. The casual players are gone. I don't think that's going to happen. I want to give a shout out. I want to ease your suffering right there, guys. It's not going to happen. Embark have made it very, very clear over the past year of the game that their focus is on casual play. If the casual players are not there, I don't care how tight your esports scene is. Nobody cares about the esports scene if there's not enough players to actually play the game, right? Like, it's not sustainable. And Embark cares more about that right now, for sure.
Yeah, I think when we even started this channel, it was like the 6.0 or 6.1 patch notes. There was conversation about esports, and then there was a .esports article that had come out where they met with the Embark devs to talk about this major. And Embark said in that interview that they want to ingrain esports into the world of the game, which the game, with the lore that exists, is an esport. Like, that's what the contestants are doing. It's basically a futuristic esport, immersive VR environment, or whatever you want to call it. But, like, that's their goal, is to still keep it casual. And as far as, like, balancing goes and things like that, I mean, we've said it numerous times that whenever we put out a video covering, like, weapon balancing or patch notes or things like that. It's like almost everybody wants to take your head off, and it's because the game is so balanced to the point that they think their weapon is the best, and arguably it's up for contention. So, you know, I agree with you. I don't think Embark's going to do anything to really balance towards just the pros, because I don't think the game even needs it at this point. There's, you know, people play testing the minigun, and now it's becoming one of the metas, but then you have other people saying that the gun sucks. And then, I mean, other games that we've played first person shooters, it's blatantly obvious what the meta is.
Yeah, and I think you can infer that based on what's happened in balancing already. Like I can tell you for a fact that there were things, and there are still things, that the pros have asked balancing for, and it either doesn't happen or it doesn't happen for a very long time, and then it eventually happens in a way that's kind of not exactly what they were asking for, and maybe eventually gets there. But like, the goal is not to take the feedback from the pros and say, here's what the game is, right? Like, because they care so much about their data and how other people play. You know, you look at something like the model, which took a very long time to get nerfed and eventually took over everywhere. But I guarantee you at the lower levels, people are still missing their model shots and people are winning with AKs. And so the pros will say, hey, this needs to be fixed. And that is something that I do think eventually, not to nerf what the pros say, but understand that those are valid concerns. If you have like a functioning pro scene and you have multiple big organizations, you need to be willing to maybe move faster with some of that stuff. But I have a lot of faith in Embark because I think they've done a really good job of nerfing in ways that aren't immediate, right? Like, let's go back to the jump pad and zipline nerf. I think people were like, why? What is the purpose, right? And actually, I saw that and I was really excited because I think it's emblematic of them looking at a class that was doing really well. Medium was just really powerful. And they said, how can we nerf medium without making the weapons feel bad? Well, let's slightly reduce their utility and make it so they're just not as omnipresent in the fight. And I think that's a good way to balance. I think people sit there and say, well, this wasn't a problem. Why do you nerf this? Because that's not how balancing works. Balancing is never a vacuum. Everything interacts with everything else. You nerf one thing, something else gets stronger. And so every time you see a change that you think is you know, doesn't make sense, think about, what does that actually change?
I think that's spot on. One last question, and then we'll move on because this has obviously been a really long. We did say this was the esports episode, so for people who aren't into competitive, we warned you ahead of time. But the one thing I actually want to ask you, as somebody who's really ingrained in the scene, is what do you think has caused Embark to wait this long to kind of announce a major or really, I mean, sell themselves to esports? And do you think it's good that they've waited this long, or do you think that they maybe missed the boat a little bit?
It's such a fire question, dude. I was thinking about this.
I think it is good. My big thought on esports is that I don't think Embark should be the one running it. That's not to say they shouldn't do the major. I think the major is great. And like when you look at something like Valve with Dota, and they have their international. The international is the tournament. It still is to this day, even though there's other tournaments that sometimes get to a higher prize pool. Like, it's always good to run that. But Embark, I don't think should be the one running their whole league. They can support it. They can bring somebody else in, but they don't have the size for it, you know? And I think the best esports are the ones that start grassroots. I think the ones that start because people are passionate about it have always been and will always be the most enduring esports, you know? Like, you look at something like StarCraft. Like, yeah, it may not really be around nowadays, but the RTS genre as a whole is pretty much dead, right? But CSGO, Dota, even League to an extent before Riot realized it was a moneymaker for them. You know, Smash Brothers, the underdog story when it comes to esports, the fighting games in general. Like, every scene that we all look on and we say, this is amazing. It all started because people were just passionate about the game. And that didn't start because Embark looked at it and say, okay, here's our roadmap. You know, season 4, we go hard in on esports, right? No, their focus is on making sure that people actually want to play their game, and they can provide support to the esports scene. But the esports scene needs to make sure that we can build the people that are excited for it. We build the casters, we build the production, we build the teams. And then that expands from there, because that's the real key at the end of the day, right? Is that it needs to, it's not Embark forcing it, it's Embark supporting and watering the work that's already been put in.
All I say is I would love to see a finals beyond the summit. I think it would be great for us to have a big gamer house and host the summit. So, you know, we can get on that. Well, I don't have the connections, but maybe one day.
We'll work on it. No, we'll work on it. We got it, trust me.
We'll make it happen.
Yeah, I think that pretty much wraps us up. I just had a couple questions from some guys at the Discord. They had some questions for you. You don't have to get too in depth, but just quick answers. We got Kai asking, how hard is it to become pro in the finals? He wants to know.
So, I mean, it really depends. Like, are you? So, I think it's as hard to become. It's probably easier to become a pro in the finals right now than it is in almost any other game. The big thing is you need to find people to play with, and that's hard sometimes. If you genuinely want to get better at the game, if you genuinely want to become a really good player, join a couple Discords. The Prohubs I've talked about that before. Prohubs is a great Discord. Anybody can join. You drop in, you get the lowest tier, and then you play pickup games. If you perform well, you start to get noticed by people. You start to move up in tiers. They have a system built in for you to learn how to play. You can ask for feedback. People are very honest with their feedback. They say, here's what you need to do better. Here's what you're not doing right. You can join Discords like the Ruby Grind Discord, which is a bunch of people that are focused, mostly EU, but they're also focused on getting better at the game, making it to the rank grind. Ranked is different than competitive, but it still is close enough that you're going to get better at the game just by playing with people who are good at it. So you want to get better, you want to be a pro, that's what you should do.
Yeah. Next question is Smashel. He wants to know what your favorite sponsor is.
Ooh, my favorite sponsor is Holtow, 100%. Insured everything for me. I'm very well, very well secured against any disaster. They haven't let me down yet.
Okay. Now with that, what's your least favorite?
Ooh, Isolde. 100% the least favorite. I mean, like, come on. I mean, they're just, it's just clothes, guys. I mean, come on. Like, what are you bringing here? There's nothing. They're big in season 4. Their big world tour change was that they colored the arena a different color. I mean, come on, Azul, you can do better than that. You're supposed to be the fashion company. You telling me all you can come up with was painting the arena blue? Come on.
Oh my god, I think we have Azult's #1 fan in our Discord.
Isn't it heartbreaking? Evelyn asks, "What's your second favorite flavor of candy?" I guess.
My second favorite flavor of candy, cherry.
Fair enough.
All right, last one. You might have already answered this, but Shaka asked, "What is the, in your opinion, most underrated weapon?"
I think it's a hot take. I think the most underrated weapon is the sniper.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's because I genuinely think so. When we get closer to the major, and if the esports scene starts to take off, there's going to be people showing up to the game that are going to stick around. And you'll get more people to pick from, right? There's a reason that, like, AAA schools are better than single A schools in sports because they have more people. The second a Kenny S type player shows up, Kenny S, the legendary op player in CSGO, right? Nerfed the weapon because he was too good at it. They nerfed it for him, okay? Kenny S type player shows up. Sniper outputs damage that nothing else, the bow comes close, doesn't quite get to the same point. If you have somebody who can hit their shots with the sniper and do it consistently, I think it would be a genuinely good weapon, and you could 100% see somebody that would show up and dominate with it. I think it's hard to use, but I think it is slept on.
Yeah, I'll say I've definitely been in games before where I'm challenging somebody with an M11 in their face and they headshot me and I die, and I'm like, I can't be mad. Skill diff.
Yeah.
But yeah, with that, we've reached our time. But is there anything else that you want to just quickly shout out or bring up real quick?
Yeah, I wanna shout out to, I mean, pretty much everyone that kind of has been around there. Burrita, again, I want to shout him out. He's been not just doing Prohub stuff, but been working with me on pretty much all of my events for a very long time. Genuinely, nobody works harder on the pro scene than this guy does. He puts so much love, care, and effort into absolutely everything he does. I want to give a shout out to Typo, Confucius, as well. 2 people that have really kind of been around a lot, human and physical as well. And the final one is I really want to shout out Rio, my co-host of The Vault, because he's been putting in so much work right beside me, and hopefully we get the chance to come on together as well, chat about the pro scene in a future episode, because the guy, I love the finals, and that guy loves it just as much. If you're looking for somebody who's ride or die with the game, he's there, and that's what I love to see. I love people that care about the game and want it to succeed just because they love it, not because they're looking for their next step on the, their journey. And that's what the guy is. He's just, he loves the game from every pore, and I really appreciate my friendship with him.
Final thing is, where can the people find you?
Yeah, so you can find me on Twitch. I have a Twitter and a Blue Sky. I don't use them. I'm very bad at social media. But if you really want to get to chat with me, you can follow my Twitch at WaltzCasts. And you can also find my Discord. It's linked on every episode of the Vault. So you check out the Vault on YouTube. You can search for the Finals Vault. It should come up. And then you can come to my Discord. I'm pretty active in my Discord. You can ask me anything you want. Chat with me there. And I do host events. So not only can you can sometimes get notified of the events that I'll run. They're pretty much open to anybody. So you can come in, you can participate. You can join in the customs I try to run every now and then. And also, I make sure to I have a news ping. So if you're interested in keeping up with everything happening, you can just come in. You'll get pinged whenever there's a tournament going on, anytime there's an event, anything big, that sort of stuff. So you can check out my Discord, which is also WaltzCast, and those are kind of the main places you can find me.
Awesome. Couple more things just before we go. First of all, thank you so much again, Waltz, for taking the time to sit with us. I know that this was over an hour, so it's a long one, but I want to personally give you a big shout out. You've been really instrumental in us getting started in content creation, especially with launching this Discord that we're running now. And, you play an integral part in our community. So I personally want to take the time to say thank you for that. Following up with that, Prohubs are currently happening for the next, 3 weeks? Wednesdays, 8 p.m. Eastern is the NA times, correct?
Yep.
And the EU times start at what time again?
EU times start at 1 Eastern. So EU first in the day, 1 p.m. Eastern, and then NA is after at 8 p.m. They're Wednesday and Saturday. We have 3 more play days. By the time this airs, 2 more play days left, so you can check those out. And then after those wrap up, we have the following Saturday. So then after those wrap up, we're going to have our playoffs and our interregional championships that are going to be happening the following weekend. So there's plenty of content coming up that you can still catch. Lots of competitive finals to keep an eye on.
Yeah, awesome. So guys, make sure you check that out. To talk about that in tandem real quick, and it's kind of a self plug for us, we will be hosting a watch party for these next play dates. They will be right here on the Final Central over on the YouTube channel, so check those out. We do also have the events marked here in Discord. If you're not a member, make sure you join up. Link in the description. All of Waltz's links will be down below as well, so make sure you join up with him, say what's up. And I think that's it. Cody, anything else you got before we head out?
No, I think you nailed it. Just shout out to Waltz, dude. My goat.
I really appreciate it, guys. Thanks for having me on. Really enjoy the stuff you make. So it's been great to chat with you.
Absolutely. Yeah. Thanks again. And we will catch all of you later. See you at the finals.